What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are staying safe and you've been doing well since the last time I posted. Now, I want you all, for just a minute, humor me. I want you to close your eyes and listen for just a minute. I want you to imagine you are doing something that's so incredibly important to you, that really goes at the core of who you are. It's something important. It's in a sacred space that's supposed to be protected, whatever it is. Now, I want you to imagine that about 30 to 40 people storm in, start yelling, chanting slogans at you. They're interrupting this space that's supposed to be yours, that's supposed to be protected. Now, I also want you to imagine someone emerges from that group with a cameraman, starts shoving cameras in your face, starts questioning you, starts questioning the person that's leading whatever you got going on. That doesn't sound like a whole hell of a lot of fun, right? And I'm guessing you guys can understand, or at least get what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the recent church storming incident that happened on January 18th in, I believe, St. Paul in Minnesota. Now, I want to be absolutely crystal clear here. This is not a political take. This is not a left take. It's not a right take. This is not a political channel. I will not allow my channel to delve into politics. If you want political commentary, go elsewhere. It's not about this. This is about religious freedom. And why am I talking about religious freedom, right? I have been openly critical of the church and will continue to do so in the future. I'm not stopping, but that doesn't make it up for the fact that what happened in this church in St. Paul on January 18th of this year, 2026, crossed a line for me, and I think should cross a line for most people. Now, people who have talked about this, I've seen it since this incident happened, left and right, have turned this into a political argument, whether they're pro what happened because they were yelling and jeering about ICE, or they're anti what happened because they might be pro ICE or whatever the situation is. That, in my opinion, is entirely the wrong take and entirely the wrong way to look at this situation. This is clearly this situation that happened with Don Lemon and the rest of these protesters. In my opinion, ICE is just a backdrop. This is a big religious freedom issue, in my point of view. So for those of you who haven't heard of what happened, it's a pretty simple story, so I'll walk you through it real quick so we're all on the same page. On January 18th of this year, 2026, there was a church service going on. It wasn't a big church service. It wasn't like a Hillsong or whatever mega church name pops into your head as I'm talking to you. They were there, families there, young kids. Everything was going as planned. But Don Lemon and these other group of protesters were walking up to this church and were about to storm into this church and break the quiet and break the sacred place that they are entitled to. Now, Don Lemon wasn't just a part of this group. He didn't happen to be a journalist who was also a part of this group. He wasn't an embedded journalist, at least in my opinion. He was clearly a part of this group. He agitated the situation. He had a cameraman. He stuck cameras in people's faces, was questioning them, scaring children. Now, Don Lemon argues, because he has since been indicted and several of the other people have been indicted on multiple charges, including like religious obstruction and basically the FACE Act, which you've probably heard other people talk about, protecting religious freedoms. He's been indicted, he's been released, but he's arguing it's a freedom of the press issue, essentially. He's arguing that I was there as a journalist, I was there to just cover the story that was happened. But in this 7-hour live stream from reports, he knew what was going on. He was there during the planning stages. There's a difference between like a war correspondent and like an embedded journalist, like he's claiming that he was, and being an active participant in what's going on. Now, if he wanted to talk to people, he could have talked to people after the chaos. He could have just filmed from the background, and if he wasn't disrupting what was going on, he could have just been talking to his camera like you'll see other actual embedded journalists do, saying, this is what's going on. I see, gunshots here, or I see an explosion that happened a couple blocks away, whatever situation that journalist happens to be covering. But real embedded journalists don't get involved in what's going on. They don't get involved in the chaos unfolding around them. The chaos unfolds around them, and they just report on what's happening. That's a big difference between actual real embedded journalism and what Don Lemon did here. Now, I'm not talking pro-ICE or anti-ICE. That's not the point of this video. If you want someone that's basing their opinion off of whether or not they agree with ICE, that's not the video. Go click somewhere else. I'm not sharing my opinions of that here and of this pastor's ties to ICE. That has no bearing on my opinion on this matter, and it shouldn't have any bearing on anyone's opinion in this case. This comes down to religious freedom, and these people try to actively intimidate worshipers at this church because they didn't like someone's alleged ties to the outside, to something outside of the church. Now, if you really hated this church that much, if you really wanted to protest this church, there are ways to do that. We've heard of the most controversial groups, like the Westboro Baptist Church, as an example. They protest all the time. They protest outside funerals of soldiers returning home. They protest outside other churches that allow gay marriages. We've all seen the signs, the Thank God for Dead Soldiers signs, all the different signs that they carry. But here's the crucial part. As controversial as the Westboro Baptist Church is, they protest outside in public spaces, getting permits when necessary. They're not storming into these places, disrupting the services or whatever's going on. They're not physically stopping the procession of whatever it is they're protesting. They're outside in public. And we've seen other controversial groups in the past outside of the Westboro Baptist Church that have understood this. But apparently they decided to go the other route on this. Now, I can understand if you're so anti-ICE, or you might want to do something about someone's alleged participation in that group that you so hate. But storming a church isn't doing that, because for me at least, and I think for a lot of other people, even though they haven't been talking about it, your point that you're trying to make, at least for me, gets lost, because I'm not sitting here talking about whatever point they're trying to make. Not that I necessarily would, because that has gotten into more political takes that I'm not going to get into here. But it's simply about knowing when and how to argue your point so that it's your point that we're talking about and not the fact of whether or not you broke the law or not. You guys get what I'm saying here? So those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Do you agree with what happened? Do you agree that there should have been charges filed? Or do you think that they were totally within their rights of going into this church and arguing and all that stuff that happened? As always, like this video, comment, share it, all that stuff. Subscribe to the channel so you're always updated on more content. If you got any other things you might want to see me cover, drop them in the comments below, and if enough of you want to see it, and if it's a good enough topic, I might just make a video on it. And until next time, guys, have fun and stay safe.